It took 10 years for several reasons. It didn't follow the conventional filmmaking pattern. That's number one. We're a very small team, and we kept it concentrated on that small team that took that period also because of the influence and affluence of the subject matter himself. Um, just when you think he's gone on to he's attained the highest level or yeah, acclaim out there, global acclaim, he goes on to get the next and the next and the next, and it's still ongoing. But at a point, of course, we had to put a cap to it and say, okay, this is where, unless it's going to keep continuing and documenting his story, and part of it also being myself, if I'm to be honest about it, being a first-time filmmaker, needing and wearing a number of hats in this production. Honestly, when I look back, I'm like, oh my goodness, how did we do this? Because I didn't even know I was functioning in most of those roles until the end. I'm like, who's the director? Who's the producer? I'm asking, because of the way, again, the unconventional pattern it followed the whole production process, and because we set out to tell a story that is not out there in the public space already. Because El Anatsui as a subject has been covered tremendously, um, we also wanted to tell a unique story that wasn't out there. So it's not an academic approach, it's a very personal approach. So we had to get him in those moments where not everybody could see him, that wasn't public and wasn't privy to, that the public wasn't privy to. So, yeah, I think in a nutshell, those were um, those were the reasons. A living legend, it's difficult enough to tell the story of a living legend, yeah, who's continuing to work. Honestly, the creative elements that came together for this film is really, for me, is the most important. It's not even the subject itself, but the people that came together to make it, starting from the funders, um, Jack Shaman, who was tremendously supportive uh, from the beginning to where we are. Um, and that's Jack Shaman's gallery, L's his agents in here in New York. We also got support from people like Olajide Bello, who was instrumental in just saying, look, if you know this person, tell this story, follow him around. So he pushed in the beginning for that. Mr. Faisal El Khalil, who is the chairman of Seven Up Bottling Companies and also a good friend of El's, as well as a collector, was also quite supportive. The only corporate sponsor and partnership we had in all of this was Access Bank Ghana. They came to our aid in 2015 with some funding, and it shows. It goes on to show the partnerships that come together in telling these stories, and with that, it's just to putting it out there and to corporate sponsors to reconsider some of these proposals on their desks and look at some of these stories in depth before saying no to these type of proposals, because where we should be best at telling our own stories. Um, that's on the funding side. On the creative side, that was the most fun for me. I mean, I worked with artists from all over the world. This film, it was great to see artists tell an artist story. So from the musicians and initially we're looking for the big artists, to be honest with you, to come and tell this story. And so we decided to look inwards, and we worked with, some artists that you may never have heard of, but their collaborations came together to tell the story, whether it was a production, our post production partners, Wong Fei Hong. Um, they did the editing through Banjo Onyekachi, or Ayetoro that did the music, contributed most of the existing music, the sounds that Elle likes, which is that ethnic Afrobeat, global jazz, fusion. We've worked with artists in the Bronx, Emancipation. Tyrone Burkett, he was so great. His beautiful saxophone rhythms. We worked with Kamtamura in Japan, who contributed that sound. We try to, because we filmed in so many places, and because Elle is a great lover of a diverse genre of music. We're able to incorporate all of these elements, even down to the local level in Nsuka, working with the artists that contributed the sound of that place, the sound of Nsuka, the sound of Anyako, um, the choir in the church where he grew up. So those were, we needed to bring in some very detailed personal elements to, you know together to tell the story. I forgot to mention, because we're looking for grandiose film scores, and we ended up creating our own through Words by Mo, which is the um, like I said, things were being unraveled to us in the process of this. In the process of it, I realized that, oh, I'm a music producer as well, because we ended up creating, we didn't want to get into trouble with anybody's music out there. So we went into the studio with, young artists that we know that have the talent for it, and they created some really great film scores. So at the end of it all, though, it's not just for the film. We want to create a soundtrack album, that will be able to put out there as well. Yeah, this is our film. Um, this is the look, and then we're gonna have the logo right in the middle, and we brought in different elements of. This was done by an artist called Yifat Bezalel. She's from Israel, and this is one of the great stories about this film, because we used it to educate others about Elle, people that wouldn't ordinarily have never um, have known about Elle. So she did this blending, of course, Elle's works, and then in the middle there you see pieces of you see the forests of Nsuka, and then the sea is Anyako, where Elle was born and grew up, and of course Elle's face there. But anyway, this is just one of the art works that we got commissioned, for the film as the film poster. The aspects are approached differently. It's the one that gives every filmmaker a headache, and that's the funding aspect of it. It's always, funding is always, it's always a bitch. That's just the um, bottom line. And if you are able to surmount that, or we you're halfway through, you can handle the production. Production comes easy when the money is there. Yeah, I would do that differently. I would approach funding a whole lot different. I think I was too expectant. And I was tamed very quickly, to manage my expectations as far as that is concerned. I don't know if I would cut down the duration, because part of it is also a selfish need. I don't want to say need, but L's company is just the best, really. I don't know if I'd cut down um that duration. I may, obviously in my next production, I'm not going to take that length of time to produce, else I would have maybe two films in my entire lifetime. But anyways, I would, I would, I would definitely do it differently time wise. I would do it in maybe half the time, with this type of subject matter, or even less, maybe in about 24 to 36 months. And part of why it took long is, initially I had a timeline of 18 to 24 months. I was in a hurry to get this done, but as we went along, the story just wasn't complete. And Elle was the one who kept on cautioning me and asking me to be patient, to take it slow and take it easy. So maybe I over listened to that advice. I don't know. But I did take that advice. I will work on a quicker timeline for my next project. But for this project, I don't think I will change anything regarding that timeline, because honestly, it built me as a person. It built me as a professional, as a filmmaker, as a business owner, because attaining that confidence to call yourself those names, or enter into those titles, is not game. It's not something I take lightly, So if this is the first um, product, and this is how long it took, and this is what I got out of it, then I have no regret whatsoever that it took this long. Just working with a fantastic crew around the world helped me. I think before virtual became virtual, before COVID happened and everybody discovered virtual, we were working virtual on this project from 2014. Um, it's not all the locations that you see in the film that we were at. We worked to get crew in different parts, even when we couldn't travel, especially for visa purposes. I hold a Nigerian passport, so it was always very difficult sometimes to be on time for some of these events or travels. But where we couldn't travel, we're able to work with a great crew, from the UK to parts of Europe, Japan, Australia, South Africa. So some of the places, we found some amazing people that are still part of the AR family, and we can still call friends today. From this project, so in directing it, yes, I just learned to work with what was available, and there were instances where I would travel with Elle and I wouldn't need a crew. So, or I couldn't afford a crew, and I would film myself. So there were times that I handled my, and L being L, I think initially as well, especially those early days in Asuka, where he was just opening up, because L is very private. So all these things is like not what is out there. So it took some time and started opening up gradually. Those were moments that it was just me and him. So I filmed myself, and it was better that way because he could talk to me. Later on, he got used to people around him, a crew. I think that was what bothered him the most, that a crew will always be there following him. But I had to allay his fears and just make him comfortable. And it even got to a point that sometimes, when I'm filming, he doesn't even know that I'm filming until I'm done. And he goes, "Oh, were you filming? Did you get, were you?" I was like, "Yeah, it's done." And he also joked, most of the time. And he's like, "Oh, I hope this doesn't come out like Nollywood drama where you film me driving, you film me coming out of the car, you film every single frame, and you call it a film." And I'm like, "No, we're gonna make it as detailed and as professional and rich." And I must say, as far as the film goes, I envisioned the film in colors. Elle is a very colorful, but the complexities of Elle, came out in the film. He's colorful, yet he's toned. He's loud, yet he's quiet. So it's he's big. Yeah. So, and that is him as a person. If you don't know him well, you may have this ideas about him, and you'll be very, very surprised that the individual that you meet. So we also try to make it as fluid, as he would have. That's the way he approaches his works as well. Back in 2005, I had the rare chance. I was a journalist in New York, and I went to Nigeria and to interview Elle, and that was my first time of knowing about him and meeting him. I went to Nsukka to uh, ho- do this interview, and it went so well. And we spent a few days in Nsukka just getting to know this man and his art. And um, and then from there, we stayed in touch. And every time he was in the States, he would let me know. And I just kept on following up. And from there, it was just a friendship that developed. And he was very much interested in my work as a journalist and as a budding producer at the time. And I must say that when once L is interested in something, he is, and he stays with it, and nurtures it, and helps and develops it. Anyway, and so from there, I think we did a few travels together. I know we went to Qatar on a project that on a commissioned project that ended up not happening. And then in 2013, I was in Nigeria. I had moved back to Nigeria, and I was doing my TV series Messengers. I'd done season 1 and 2, and I was getting a bit tired of it. Not the show itself, but because it was thrusting me in such in the public light that I wasn't really very comfortable with. I wanted people to focus on the show and not focus on the individual. So I was like, you know what, I gotta find something else to do. um and so I was exploring different production ideas. I'd done some commissioned work for news, documentaries, investigative reports. And so in 2013, the idea came up through my friend Olajide Bello to uh why don't you follow L, why don't you do this, why? I was like, oh, okay, sure, why not? And I asked him in 2013, and he agreed, and we signed an exclusive 10-year deal. Um, 2023 is the 10th year. Yeah, we signed I didn't think it would. I was like, we'll be done in 2 months, in 12 months. But anyways, we signed a 10-year. We started, but we didn't start work immediately. We started working on the film proper in 2014, and the way it started, I didn't even know that the work had started because I had, I'd been assaulted in Lagos, and I, it became a police matter that didn't go anywhere. So I took some time off. I went to my parents in Abuja for about 6 months, and just to veg and chill. And I went, so from there, I was tired, broke, wondering what next. Um, so I reached out to Akin Marino, who's L's lawyer at the time, the late Akin Marino. He passed during the course of this. And Akin was kind enough to send me, I didn't even know what was going on, but he sent me 150,000 naira, which was not much, not a lot of money then, but it was a whole lot to me. And he's like, I said, just take care of yourself, whatever you want to do, just. So I was talking to my cousin Osheza in London, and I was saying, Aki was kind enough to send me this money. I don't know. So she was like, look, Oisa, just, there's no money now circulating. Just spend it wisely. Take care of yourself, come out of this. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to Nsuka. I just like, what? I said, I'm going to hire a vehicle. I'm going to charter a car and go to. And that was exactly what I did. So, and she's like, I don't think it's the time. 150K is not going to cover anything. It was very little money, But I was like, no, let me put this to you. So that's how I went to Nsuka. Yeah, in 2014, and I stayed at Elle's house that period, and it was so healing for me, very therapeutic. I got to work. I just went with my one small camera, and then we started. There we started, and I remember I had the conversation about money with him then, knowing that, wait a minute, he can fund this, you know he can fund this if he let me so I'd ask if he wanted to go down that route, and I did during that first visit in 2014, and he said no. Prior to going to Nsuka, no, I had never even heard of him. I heard of him in New York through a gentleman called Peter Tichansky, who is the president of the Business Council for International Understanding. He still is. And he said to me, hey, have you heard of this guy who lives in your country? And yeah, so go and check him out. And prior to then, I'd never heard of him. And once I did, once I had that introduction and sent him an email introducing myself as a journalist from New York, and I'd like to come to Nigeria and interview him, and he was accepting, the rest is history, as they say. This question is tricky because I don't mean it to be sexist at all, but most of the filmmakers that I draw influence from, I don't know how come they're mostly male filmmakers. I don't really think there's anything wrong with that, but it just happens to be the list. Um, but the way Gordon Parks tells his stories, uh, you know, um, who centered really on the African American story and expounded it, through his lens, whether it's just that one camera. He bought the camera for $12.50 at a pawn store, and he changed his life, and he was able to tell very, very really moment in time stories, with his lens. There's a gentleman called, he's dead now, Hubert Ogunde, who is a Nigerian filmmaker who was making film at the time that, nobody else was. But he kept his films really. I watched this film as a child, and they're downright scary, But he kept these subjects really traditional, and told ethnic indigenous stories about history and things like that. So, but that early um, influence on me, that wow, this guy has a ability to scare me like this as a child, um and growing up, I didn't on and his films were in Yoruba, so I didn't even understand what they were saying, but just the whole element, the color, I can still remember their costumes, and all of that. So Huberto Ogunde was one. There's a gentleman on the West Coast. I'm speaking with him in a few days. Actually, tomorrow I'm talking to him. Um, and David Hoffman. David Hoffman is he's been around for a minute. I learned about him when I was talking to when I was reading about Gordon Parks, but he's one great filmmaker that again has transcended you know generations, and he's able to reach different people through his subjects. I like classic films. I like the black and white, 1920s. I like everything about that era of production. I like some elements of the silent film era, even using just gestures or eye movements, and to tell the story. So I think those help. Those are of filmmakers and filmmaking styles that help you develop your technique. I can watch something and pick you know the graphic styles from there. So you can't watch a film and take every single element. I also learned from modern filmmakers like Musa Seme Abna. He's from Senegal. He taught me to use how to use music and how to create music. How to get the sound that I want. And he taught me that very recently at the last New York Film Festival, just in his conversations about using indigenous local musicians whom you're also feeding and giving work. So all of those and on the Africa of on the US side, I love Spielberg's wild creativity, but I like um Stanley Nelson. And I like Stanley Nelson because the same reasons I like Gordon Sparks. He's able to tell periodic stories. He did Crack. He did the Miles Davis documentary. And just these people, their use of music, all of that. I can go on and on, but these are some of the people I look up to, in terms of storytelling. Most recently, I joined a group called the New York Women in Film New York Women in Film and Television, and there I really coming in contact with amazing female directors across the world, and also getting in being privy to their works as well. Lisa Hepner is one of them. She did um, the film about diabetics. There was another lady that did a film about, I think it's called Shockwaves, about maternal death in the US, especially amongst African American communities or communities of color. So more recently, I'm expanding on that. The sky is our limit, to be honest with you. I was in Nigeria for 10 years, between 2008 to 2018. And and I always said, there's story in the mud. There's you got if you blink, you miss it. If you're not in tune, you won't even see it. But the stories abound, honestly. And I find that for the film average filmmaker in my country, it's just a matter of an opportunity. But what I'm happy about is that I'm happy in a way, and there's a flip side to it, is that the market is opening up. Film has gotten less mysterious to make. People that ordinarily wouldn't have access to um, all those tiers, all those steps to being called a filmmaker, you know, can reduce that backlog now, and create their own films in minimum time. But again, the flip side to that is, the quality that is attached to um, um, filmmaking, or just storytelling, and the authentication, and who's telling the story, and who's telling your story. So I'm glad that the market has opened up, and Africa is really hot now, whether it's film or music or theater. There's a lot that hasn't even been scratched. A lot hasn't been told, and I'm really hoping that this is just an opening. This is just a yeah. There's a whole lot, and what is more important for me in this process is African filmmakers owning their stories, and being able to tell their stories, and being able to bring in the perspectives that are needed. Because honestly, I have no problem with anybody else telling the story. But my issue really is perspectives, is being able to embrace and bring in all of those perspectives and not leave any out. And there's no one perfect person to tell a story. It's just a This is an art film, and we're not it's not like we're out for like a commercial theatrical reveal. And so we understand the market for the film already, even in making the film, and we know that it's not a film for everybody, but we're hoping to get it into the hands and ears and eyes in front of these decision makers that can, allow it trickle down to everybody. Because the story is told in a way that it's not an academic approach to El Anatsui. It's everybody's story. It's for that child who thinks that, oh, I can make it as an artist, or I can't, So the story has been told in a way that it can be viewed in schools. It can be subjects for discussions. It can be, you can use it as tourism pieces because of the landmarks and the places that we talked about in the film. You can teach history. You can teach about art. So these are distribution platforms, galleries, schools, educational institutions, where we hope to have screenings and hope to hold discussions around the films. We don't have a distributor yet for the mainstream media aspect of it, because our initial stop before we even go to schools and institutions is really the film festivals. And from the film festivals, we will now hopefully have a distributing partner, and hopefully be able to get it in front of the appropriate buyers, so that mainstream media, whether it's Netflix or Amazon um, or Prime um, or Disney, can pick it up. So, but the idea is to get it in front of, to use it to teach our children, and to get it in front of that artistic community and beyond, really. Mm. I don't know if the film will make its money back like that. That's not really the would like for it to, but so we're not looking at theatricals and those type of release platforms. Rather, we're looking at tailored events that can um, across the world, that can really bring the man closer to the people, and also